Okay, so I'm ready to start taking out all of the dust, and to do that I'm going to use the 3-inch quick cut sander. I've got it hooked up directly to my soapy water, and the way you turn on the soapy water is this valve on the side. Hopefully you can see it, but I just turn that valve a little bit and immediately water starts flowing out. So I'm going to grab a piece of 1500 grit paper, and I'm using the red pad, which is not the densest pad or the hardest pad, but it's close. And when you're doing this, you want to use the densest pad you can, as long as it's staying in a flat panel. The denser the pad, the flatter the surface is going to appear, because it's going to really grind down the high spots and make everything flat. So I've got it hooked up to the air, I've got it hooked up to the water, and what you want to do is you want to mark where your dust particles are, and then you only want to use this pad for around the dust particles to take them off. So I like to wrap the cord out, turn on, so I've got a little bit of flow, and then this right here is the controller for how fast or slow your pad goes. So it's kind of a variable speed. So we find our dust particle, we just run right along that and feel for if the dust particle is gone, and then you can just go around to every single one of those and nub them out. And you can see my DA is not going fast. But you can see how that really does actually go pretty quickly. Now here's the area where I had the run. You can see how cool this tool is, because it really it works really quickly. With that said, you really got to respect it, because this is removing a lot of material, a lot more than you realize. And so you got to make sure that you have enough clear coat on your panel and that you treat this stuff with respect, because you will basically ruin your project if you don't do this correctly. So you just want to go really slow and practice on something else. I mean, obviously I'm not going to take this system and pull it right out of the box and then go to town on my brand new paint. I'm going to go and get a hood or get something else and practice on. So I'm going to go ahead and finish nubbing out all of the dust with the 3-inch, and then we're going to tackle the orange peel and the rest of this trunk lid with the 6-inch. So you can adjust the flow of water and also move the water bar up and down to put it exactly where you want it to go. So when you're doing this, you definitely want to make sure that you're in an area that it's not going to matter if you get 5 gallons of water on the floor. And also keep in mind that you want to work across this panel as evenly as possible. You don't want to spend too much time in one spot. I mean, it's kind of standard buffing rules apply. And again, be really careful around edges and holes and anything else that adds to the complexity of it. This is about the ideal panel for this sanding system, because it's fairly flat, and I can go across this really quickly. Like, it would probably take me about 2 to 3 hours to wet sand this through all of the different grits by hand. And with this system, I can tear through this pretty quickly. I mean, it'll be ready to buff in less than 45 minutes. So I'm going to get to it, and then after you sand a little while, it's a good idea to check your progress with a squeegee. So if you come up here, you can kind of see the progress that I've made. And it kind of looks like it still is starting to look like the texture of a basketball in a lot of respects, because you still see the shiny spots, which are lower than the dull spots. And then also you can see kind of where I sanded out some of the little dust spots. So you want to continue going from 1500 or even 1000 if you have a lot of orange peel, to 2000, and then to 3200, and then this panel will be really, really ready to buff. So you want to take it so where you don't see any orange peel and it's a uniform kind of a matte finish with the 1500. Then take those swirl marks or sand marks out with a 2000 grit before you ever even think about picking up the buffer. So I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of this panel. And then finally, the last thing I'm going to say is that before you buff, you want to take this tape off and sand out any of these edges by hand. I always do all the edges by hand just because it's really too easy to grind off the paint or the clear coat on the edges of the panels unless you take it really gently. So I'm going to get this sanded out, and we'll go from there. So when you're doing this, I like to take the sander and work in quarters on the trunk lid. And I count. I go up and I go down, and then I go across on that one section that's the quarter. Okay? And you kind of do a random pattern. And then I move to the other quarter and repeat the same pattern. So go across, then you go up and down, and you can actually feel the sander speed up and slow down when you know that the panel is getting smoother. So you work your way across the panels and keep in track of how many times you have done it. And then when you think you've gotten pretty close, it's a good idea to check. And what you're looking for, you can come take a look at this, get up closer, is you're looking for this to pretty much have almost no orange peel in it whatsoever. And so this is I'm done with 1500. Now I'm going to move on to 2000. And by the time I'm finished with 2000, all of this will be completely and totally flat. Mirror finish, no little shiny speckles at all. So I'm going to do 2000 in the same pattern, working in quarters. Going back and forth, up and down, and then kind of diagonal on one quarter, and then the next quarter, and the next corner, and work your way all the way around this trunk lid, and checking your progress every single time. It's important to squeegee off because that will actually take the clear coat that's coming off and take any of the contaminants off, and gives you a nice clean surface. With the 2000 grit, and you can still see there's a couple of dust spots that have become apparent that didn't get them totally out with the 3-inch. So I'm going to go back to the 3-inch, and that's kind of how this process goes. You sand it, and then you clean it, and then you find more stuff, and then you sand it, and then you clean it. And so between every round, when I change grits, you always want to use the wax and grease remover and clean that surface off. And the reason you want to clean the surface off every single time is you don't want to contaminate the next step. So if you're going from 1,000 grit to 1,500 or from 1,500 to 2,000, you want to make sure that all of that sand and grit is completely off of the panel, so that it doesn't get trapped underneath the sander and cause more damage, because the point is to go up in the grits and not go down. So I'm going to go ahead and take the 3-inch and nub out a couple more of these little dust particles, and then we'll probably be ready to go to the next step. And the next step after that, after the 2,000, is Quick Cut sells actually 3,200 and 4,000, which in my opinion is technically like polishing. So that will kind of be our very first stage of our polishing. So now I'm ready to go ahead and swap the pads to the gray pad, which is the softest pad. Now as you go up in grits, in paper, like now I'm going to go to 3,200, you want to go to softer and softer pads, because the goal is not to make it flat. The goal is to make everything smooth and to take out sand scratches. So.